Welcome to our class on the new YNAB. We are so excited to be finally sharing this with you. Before we get started, I want to make sure that things are working right and tell you how you can chat with me. You won't be able to speak to me through a microphone or a telephone, but you will be able to type questions on over. So let's quickly test that. Let us know where you're listening from. So we've got folks today from California, Minneapolis. We've got folks from Texas, Massachusetts, the UK. It looks like everything's working just great. Thanks, folks. I appreciate that. I want to encourage you to sit back and watch the presentation. With this release, we're introducing a lot of new stuff that we're going to be showing you, and I have a lot to cover tonight, so we may not get to every question. I'll be prioritizing questions about how things work and how to do things. We'll be talking more in depth about the why behind this over on the blog and our podcasts and Whiteboard Wednesdays. So we're going to be talking about some new features today. It's a lot of improvements we've made that are designed to make your budgeting more effective, more focused, and simpler than ever before. But I want to start by talking about the rules. Now, the foundation of our method is our 4 rules, always has been. But over the years, we found ourselves talking about more than just the rules. And you've been asking about more than just the rules, like how to set goals or which job should the dollars do first. So with the new YNAB, we're introducing some new resources and new thinking that take the method to the next level. We now have guides for people who are budgeting together called Join Forces, and we have got a guide for those people that are focusing on debt, and we have one on simplifying your finances as well. And those represent some of our core beliefs here at YNAB. Now, as we worked on the release, we were really driven by the method. Rule 1, still the same, give every dollar a job. And we've made it easier to assign dollars wherever you need them, and we're a lot more clear that you really do need to do that. I'm going to be showing you that in a bit. Rule 2 is now embrace your true expenses. We felt that save for a rainy day had sort of a negative connotation, and not all Rule 2 funds are negative, right? Like my vacation category, that's definitely not negative. And believe it or not, the word save confused a lot of people who had certain specific associations with savings. And we wanted to convey that non-monthly bills are real and true expenses that you do need to consider and prepare for monthly. And in fact, we really do want you to embrace them. That's deliberate because we feel they're that important. Rule 3 has the same name, roll with the punches. We wanted to be clearer and more consistent and at the same time make it easier to implement. So I'm going to be walking you through that in the demo today. We changed the name of Rule 4 to Age Your Money. And this name change really gets to the heart of how you break the paycheck to paycheck cycle, something that YNAB has always been great at. So we're going to cover that today too. But before we dig in too far, I do want to quickly talk about some wording changes that we made in the sake of clarity. Now, while these aren't the biggest features I'm going to be talking about, I will be using these labels, so I wanted to quickly cover this first. When it came to categories, we were seeing 3 terms for 2 things. We were seeing master categories, categories, subcategories, and we spent a lot of time explaining that master categories were really for grouping categories together. So we made that more clear. Master categories are now called category groups, and then you have categories, and that's it. The 3rd column is now called available instead of balance, because balance is really an accounting term, and available refers to what you have available. Available to budget is now called to be budgeted. We wanted to be more explicit here that those dollars need to be budgeted. And then finally, after explaining that off-budget accounts are for tracking like a gazillion times, we decided to just call them tracking accounts, since that's what they do. They track balances. So there are about a dozen features I want to walk you through today. The first one is YNAB is now a web-based application, and we are so excited about what that means for you. It makes accessing your budget super easy. Chromebook, Linux, work computer, no problem. Just log in and budget. This also means no more Dropbox, and trust me, we are just as excited about that as you are. No more Dropbox issues, no more having to empty Dropbox when it's full just so you can sync. So with Dropbox out of the way, the sync is seamless. Now for the tech savvy among you, if you make a change to the web app, we'll push that up to the server and your other devices immediately. If you make a change on your mobile device, it may take 60 seconds to filter down to the web app, but it'll be perfect and worth the wait. Now, speaking of getting all your data in the right place when you need it, we've made it easier in another way. You can now import transactions directly from your bank. You no longer have to visit each bank, download a file, and upload it to YNAB. This works with most US and Canadian banks. So let's add one here, and I'll show you how easy this is. Choose the checking account type. I'll find my bank in the list, and it starts to connect. And there we go. Now, I know some of you may be worried because you may be thinking, well, you did a lot of forum and blog posts over the years about why direct connect is bad. Are you abandoning your beliefs? Absolutely not. We just realized we were wrong about that. We were allowing importing from the bank, but only in the most tedious way possible, okay? So you had to go to each bank site and download the data and pull it in. So that kind of tedium adds no value to your budgeting. So we basically just had a collective epiphany and wanted to make things easier for you. And as you can see, it's now connected. Now, also to let you know, we know that some banks won't work with this, and I know some of you may not be comfortable with Direct Connect and handing over your bank credentials. Totally fine. It's optional. You can still add transactions manually. We are big fans of awareness. That's what makes YNAB work. So I still need to review and categorize and approve each transaction. When there's a transaction to be imported, I can see the number right there. I just click on that, and we just added here. Let's choose a category here. I will choose, maybe we'll choose gifts. And there we go. And that's it. So it's the same as, before in that sense, just a little bit easier for you. I can tell you, I personally wanted this feature for a while, but I really had no idea how much easier it was going to make things. The transactions are just there. It's so awesome. And you're also going to find that direct import makes reconciliation a breeze, because we just ask you if the balance in your bank records as of today matches what YNAB says it should be. And most of the time, because you're entering on the go with your mobile device and double checking with direct import, it's just going to be right. So you just click yes and you're done as soon as you start. It takes me about 5 seconds to reconcile. It's right almost every single time. Just absolutely love it. Now, we're also talking about making it easier for you to make good decisions. That was a huge focus for us in this upgrade. So another thing that we did was we added an inspector to the budget to help you make better decisions. All you need to do is select a category, and the inspector appears on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, the inspector is home to a variety of information that's going to help you budget effectively. One thing in the inspector that's going to help you is goals. You can see right there. We know you've been setting goals for a while. We have too. It's one of the big reasons why you want to budget. But to keep track of them, you had to do things like name your categories with an amount and a date that you were saving for. And that's not dynamic at all, right? Well, no more. You can now set goals. They update dynamically as you work towards them. And I have to tell you from my own experience, it's so awesome. I've always been a really good saver. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect goals to make a big difference for me because I'm like, well, I already know how to save. I was so wrong. I am absolutely saving more than I was before because the goals keep me so much more focused on my plans. So great. So if you set a goal, this is where it's going to track your progress. You're going to get breakdowns on how long it will take to reach your goal, how much to budget if you've already set a target date for the goal. And if you've reached a goal, we'll celebrate with you and let you know. Now, you can also see information in the inspector. Let's go back a month here about how much cash and credit spending there was. Let's look at groceries. $20 cash left over from October, budgeted $500 this month, cash spending, credit spending. We really break it out in the inspector here. And you can also see the quick budget options. Quick budget, in fact, got a huge facelift in the new YNAB because now you can pick and choose which categories you want and then quick budget based on that. Very, very cool. So let me show you what I mean here. Let's select all of my immediate obligations, and I'm going to deselect utilities because I want to show you something else about that for a second. And so now I can quick budget based on those, the average amount spent, just with the click of a button. That's all I need to do. And those categories are now funded. Now I was talking about showing you something else. Let's take a look at utilities. Scheduled transactions are now in the inspector as well. Before, they were all about account entry, and the budget was left out completely. But the truth is, people wanted information about their scheduled transactions on the budget so that they know what to budget for. We like that idea. We want to support that. And where do we go when we want more information? The inspector. So if you've got scheduled transactions coming up, it will let you know if you've budgeted enough. Right now, I have not budgeted enough for these 2 scheduled transactions coming up, and that's why I'm getting the alert here in the category. And in fact, I'm going to add another scheduled transaction to this category. Let's go ahead and add, let's see, I want to add a water bill, water company. That's going to be under utilities, and $40. And you can see I've scheduled that for the 31st. Now, scheduled transactions appear in gray. Those transactions have not happened yet, right? That's why they're in gray. When they do actually happen, that's when YNAB will auto-enter them, and at that point, they'll affect the budget and the account balance. So you can see over here now on the budget that I've got that third water bill is now showing up, and I can easily budget for the upcoming transactions with just the click of a button. So simple. Now, I want to shift gears for a little bit, and I want to talk about honesty. I was just talking about the info in the inspector, but if it wasn't accurate, what would be the point? Nothing is more important than your budget giving you clear and accurate feedback about the money that you really have available in your budget. However, in YNAB 4, there were 3 ways it wasn't being honest and realistic in the information that it was showing you. And one of those things that wasn't really honest or accurate was credit cards. It was very confusing because it didn't really reflect the real world, and there was no way to determine what your credit card payment should be based on your budget. Now, I know some of you figured it out, but we saw lots of users struggle with it, and a lot of people just flat out gave up. So that's a whole lot of people who aren't benefiting from the YNAB method because they gave up. So we fixed it, and we built a system that reflects what actually happens when you use a credit card and use it inside a budget. So forget everything you know about credit cards from YNAB 4. Pre-YNAB debt is no more. We always wanted to reflect the idea that when you use a credit card within your budget, that purchase used the money that you had budgeted in that category, say clothing, for example. So when you bought a $30 shirt with money that you budgeted using your MasterCard, the $30 was gone. That was still the same. Let's take a look. Got money budgeted for clothing. I'm going to use my MasterCard. And I'll just pick a date here. Clothing and $30. And we can see that that has been subtracted from the clothing category. The problem is this isn't really honest, because if you haven't paid the credit card bill, the money is still in the checking account. The truth is, it just has a different job now. So now when you buy that $30 shirt with your MasterCard, you have $30 less in clothing because it moved. The $30 moved up here into the credit card category so that it's ready there for the payment. That's its new job. Just imagine for a second that you were using a cash-based system. You go to the store to buy the shirt, but you forgot the cash that you set aside for clothing. But they like you at the store, so they say, hey, that's okay, just take the shirt and pay us back later. So when you get home, you've got the shirt, and you still have the $30 cash. But now that $30 has a different job. Now its job is to pay back the store. So you put it somewhere so you'll definitely remember it the next time you head down to the store. That's what this category is for, okay? Another thing to keep in mind, the moment you use a credit card, you've created debt. It doesn't matter if the balance on your card is from spending a long time ago or spending today. Just like the $30 owed to the store was debt, even though I had the cash at home, right? The difference is, and this is a really big point, when you use a credit card to buy something that you've already budgeted for, you've got debt, but you also have a plan to pay it off. Think about the store and the shirt. There was a plan, right? When you use a credit card to buy something that you haven't budgeted for, you overspend your budget, right? You've created debt that you don't have a plan to pay off. That's okay. Just budget some more, move some money around, and a plan is made. Also, we recognize that you might have a credit card balance that you can't pay back right away, like this Visa, right? Big balance here. If your balance includes more debt than your current purchases, just budget for that debt right there in that credit card payments line until it's gone, okay? In fact, I'm going to budget a little more here for the MasterCard so we can make a payment. Now, as you may have noticed, as I do this, I get updated information in the inspector. Remember, that's what the inspector is for, getting information. Now, your payment, hey, that's just what's available in your credit card payments category. It includes any budgeted spending, like the $30 shirt, plus anything extra budgeted toward debt, other debt. That's it. So when you make a payment, you'll also see that in the inspector. So let's do a quick payment here. Transfer it to the MasterCard, $130. And we can see that over here on the MasterCard, nothing to pay because I've paid this off now. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So now we're talking about YNAB giving you realistic and honest information. So let's talk a little bit about Rule 3. We also felt we weren't using Rule 3 in a very accurate way. And we always want to give you accurate feedback, right? Well, when you overspend a category with cash spending, like I've done here, right? Not necessarily literal paper dollars, but the checking account or cash spending. When that happens, you can't trust your category balances. And that's because the amount you overspent by has left the budget entirely. And dollars that appear to be sitting in some of your other categories are actually gone. And that's why it's so important to use Rule 3 to cover overspending right away. And that's why if you don't, the overspent amount is deducted from the following month, just like it's always been. Basically, there's a little bit of a grace period to the end of the month for you to correct it. And if you don't at that point, we do. However, in YNAB 4, you could override this setting. You could let that overspending ride in that one category, and that meant we weren't giving you really accurate information about what you had available in your categories. And really, you weren't giving every dollar a job either. You were giving jobs to dollars you didn't have anymore. Now, for people close to the financial edge, this is downright risky. For people with large reserves, well, you've got the money to cover the overspending, so go ahead and cover it. I said at the beginning, we wanted to make the implementation of Rule 3 more consistent. Now, if you're used to turning that arrow to the right, this is going to be a big change for you, and we understand that. We felt it was a really important change. I know I was really lazy with this. I had one category with this huge overspending that I had just let ride in that category. Those dollars were gone. And it was a lot of us on the team really realized, that we were hiding from a lot of overspending by using that arrow to the right. Now, speaking of covering overspending, we've made that easier too. We found that people had a hard time figuring out how to move money from one category to another, especially if there was nothing budgeted in the current month, like in this example here. Well, we want the new YNAB to support the rules vigorously. So now it's easier to cover overspending when it crops up. And by the way, you can also move money the same way I'm doing it now, just by clicking on that available column. I'll move some money here from home maintenance to cover that auto repair. Done. Now, what if your overspending is debt spending on a credit card and you can't cover it, right? That big $1,000 car repair. Well, when the month turns over, it's simply represented in the balance on your card. This too is reality. Just budget to your credit card payments category to pay it back. Finally, in YNAB 4, there was one other way the budget wasn't really being honest. When you budget in a future month, like setting money aside for the rent payment that's happening next week, it wasn't subtracted from the amount available to budget in the current month. And that could lead to thinking that you have more money than you actually do. That's not good. So we fixed that. Now, when you budget in a future month, it affects what you have to be budgeted now. And it's labeled at the top of the budget as budgeted in the future. So let's go over here to January for a second. And I'm going to take all of this money here. And I'm just going to throw it in the Visa category just so that you can see here. I'm going to budget it to the Visa. And so now I'm budgeted to 0 in January and in December, and look at the budgeted in the future, it's updated. Now keep in mind, once you budget into the future, the last month where you have activity, that's where the most up-to-date numbers are. If you budget next month and then keep budgeting this month, those dollars are going to come first from the budgeted and future amount, not from the to be budgeted. If you need the money now, you need the money now. That's fine. So we pull it out of the future budgeting. Now is basically prioritized over the future. So you can see if I was to budget another $100 here, when I go over to January, I can see that I'm over budget. It's been pulled out of that budgeted in the future money. Okay? If you need it now, you need it now. So just make sure you check those future months and correct any over budgeting that might occur. Now, the nice thing about being able to budget in the future directly is how it affects Rule 4. This was always about breaking the paycheck to paycheck cycle and getting a month ahead of your expenses. Makes you a lot more secure financially, right? The more time between when you receive money and when you spend it, the less stress you're going to feel. If you have what we call a buffer, you know exactly what I mean. But this confused a lot of people because it was so inconsistent. You could be paid on the last day of the month, and technically you had a buffer, but not a lot of security. It also took a long time for people to get a month ahead and feel successful, so victories felt really slow. But the reality is, as you were working on that, you were doing better every single day. It was just really hard to see. And also, some folks have highly variable income, and 1 month ahead, that wasn't enough for them to feel secure. We actually ran a class for those folks because of that issue of variable income, and hundreds of people came to it every single week. So with the new YNAB, we're introducing the age of money right here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. This measures how old your money is on average when you spend it. It's the age of money is basically averaging your last 10 outflows. You age your money by implementing YNAB's first 3 rules. Yes, Rule 2 funds provide the same amount of security and stability that the buffer always did. We had just sort of drawn a kind of artificial line between them before. Just like that paid on the last day of the month was a bit of an artificial line, right? You can also age your money by explicitly allocating some money to next month's expenses, like I just did in January. The goal is to have money that's at least 30 days old, and on your way, you'll be able to watch your incremental day-by-day progress. In fact, if we go back here to August, we can see that when I started this month, I ended the month 5 days. My money was about 5 days old. But as I worked on it through time, and as I followed these first 3 rules, that number grew until I had put a really good distance between myself and the financial edge, basically, right? This is much more flexible since you get to determine what number you're comfortable with. Maybe 30 days is fine for you, but maybe it's not. Maybe some of you will shoot for 60 or 90. It's totally up to you. I know that those of us on the team have really enjoyed finding out how old our money is, and we're betting that you will too. Now, if you're starting with a big balance like I was, right, that number is going to grow for a while. Trust me, so fun. And sure, someday you're going to use some of your Rule 2 funds and it'll go down, but there's nothing wrong with that, right? So don't worry about that. I know that my numbers now have topped out at about 125 days old. And then I had some spending over the holidays, and it dipped back down to about 110. So it's a little bit of a window for me between about 110 and 125. And everybody's going to find their own comfort line. And yeah, that includes my rainy day funds. It includes the fact that I've budgeted for next month. It includes all that stuff. And it's just one way of being able to get a snapshot of how I'm doing. All right, so we are really excited about all these changes and what they mean for your budget. We have more improvements coming, and that's one thing about a web app is we'll be able to roll things out quicker. I want to let you know about 5 things we have high on our priority list that I can't promise any specific dates, but I want to let you know about them. Budgeting, importing. If you're coming from YNAB 4 or YNAB 3, you'll soon be able to bring your budget with you. Reports. Your budget's forward-looking with a strong emphasis on now, but we know that historical spending trends can help you budget, so reports are coming as well. If your bank is outside the US or Canada, or maybe you prefer to import transactions manually, that is going to come along eventually too. The ability to import a file you've downloaded, that's on its way. We're working on it. Reordering accounts in the sidebar here. Not to worry, you'll be able to change the sort order soon. That's something we're working on. And the last thing that's a big priority right now is keyboard shortcuts. You're going to love them. It's going to make things much, much faster. So that wraps up my presentation. And at this time, I am happy to take any clarifying questions that you may have.